I created a retrieval augmented generation system in my blog. I did Rag blog. This is a project of mine which started actually 2 years ago, 2024. I was amazed of the appearing of Llama 3.1, which was somehow a breakthrough in open source models. And I thought, okay, let's go try to fit this my blog and see if it is able to read, to understand, to write using my voice, my tone, my ideas, and expand them. Take my profile, distill the soul of my documents, the soul of my identity when writing them, and try to use it and write it the way I write, the things I write about, and figure out how deeply it understands the deep things that I had written down them. Some of them, which by the way are kind of cryptic, because I don't want to place subtitles in the things that I do. I just want to, this the whole thing, and try to break your mind and try to fight against if you are curious enough to go deeper into that. So I was able to do that with artificial intelligence at that time, at some point, at some level, because we had these ChatGPT things, the chatbots, which were very interesting, but it was simply hadn't the abilities, the capabilities to browse internet, to go to parse content. It was what is coded in the weights. It's fine. It's there. The rest, they used to somehow hardcode an answer saying, "My training is up to that date, and I don't know nothing about the world from that that moment on." So that was the kind of things that were able to do that. And by the way, large language models were very impressive even at that time, 2024. Probably what GPT 3.5 or even 4. They were pretty impressive, but 2026 as of today, it's been like centuries from in terms of the amount of developments and improvements that we have with things like any chatbot now is able to go parse, read the internet, whatever it needs, and come up with updated knowledge, and it's pretty amazing. But it's kind of a different story. It is always the same battle which happened. I don't know. Maybe during the dark ages, it happened the same: centralized versus decentralized entities approaches. And it goes even deeper. It is brute force versus smart approaches, which most of the times are multi-tier systems, multi-tier approaches, where we have, in this case, you have a big LLM with brute force encoding all of the knowledge about the humankind, reads and stores a compressed version of the internet in its model weights. And in the other hand, we have a tiny model being able to go find some pieces of content and do something interesting with them without needing to memorize. It's always the dilemma, the contrast, the complementarity between learning and memorization, which happens many times. And RAG, retrieval augmented generation, somehow, even if it is somehow like a hacking for, the large language model has limited context. It has just 2 million tokens. We cannot fit the documentation of our company across the last 50 years of of activity of a company, of a big corporation. We have not context enough for the LLM to be aware of our private data for this long time and this level and this amount. But RAG systems are very useful for that. For some people, I think the attitude towards retrieval augmented generation is just a temporary solution until the LLM is strong enough to be able to have all of the information in context. And probably maybe Google is one that it's pushing very eagerly towards that direction of unlimited context. You can fit whatever you want to the prompt as a context, because the context is several millions and it's very lightweight. Even in the latest approach, in the latest paper of research that I have with TurboQuant, which is a quantization for the context Q value memory, for the Q value cache, it goes towards that direction of being able to handle longer and longer context in order to be able to be handled within the neural network as a brute force single entity, all encoded into the LLM approach, versus this kind of, I'd say this is not a temporary hack, the approach for retrieval augmented generation. It is simply more efficient system, which is always relying on multi-tier approach, hierarchical things for being able to go have a limited model and be able to navigate a pool of data in an efficient way. The other side of the thing is that maybe try to show it to you. I hope not to spoil everything, but the cable is not, I cannot put the cable longer, but the thing is that, as you can see, this is, I think I can show it to you. This is my GeForce NVIDIA new GPU card. I'd say, okay, let's spend a few hundred euros, a few $100 into a 60 gigabytes RAM of GPU memory, and see what we can do with that. And that is the reason why that is the starting point for taking back this 2-year-old project of mine for RAG and give it a second try. I acquired recently the GPU. I used to do all on my CPU laptop. It's not the same. And these models actually, the release of by Alibaba for Qwen 3.5, these models of new generation for open source, which are very capable, even for agentic workflows. This is stronger than Ollama 3.1, the one that I took for 2 years ago. So I wanted to give it a try, and that's the reason why I took this again. So let me show you. I have here in my mono repo, where I sometimes share some of the work and use as a basis for my work. I have several modules, and I have one which is RAG-blog. And RAG-blog is this is a retrieval augmented generation for personal blog. I have a blog which is delightful observaciones, which is spam. This is the blog that I use to place posts that I write from time to time, which dates back to 2011. That reveals that not the blog is old, and I'm even older. I'm almost a grumpy old grandpa, almost not quite there. And I write here things about, well, it started with activist things, my impressions about economics, about ideas, about Bitcoin, about philosophy, about boxing, and sometimes more intimate things, like Mensaje en una trompeta, which is about my wife before becoming my wife, before getting married. And then, well, then they came the girls, and I start writing. Most of the things recently are somehow or another about being father and about my daughters. What else I should be writing about them? So my idea was, okay, I cannot fit this into Llama, so let's build a retrieval augmented generation system, which is being able to take all the content which I crawled from the internet, even if it is mine and I can have a backup. I do it online because it's easier. So I extract the posts. There is a very nice, interesting work about parsing and crawling and parsing and scrapping, and I keep it as JSON, and I split them into chunks. When we take content for retrieval augmented generations, we always split it into chunks, into atomic units, which we can semantically search and retrieve, take as context for the LLM to, well, we split them, we embed in, there is an embedding model which projects the pieces into vectors, and we persist it in Chroma. It's one of the many indexing sources and databases and vector indexes for semantic search. There are some others, WV8 or graph retrieval, graph semantic search. There are other. Sometimes I forget about the name. Well, there are plenty of them. Chroma is pretty lightweight and straightforward, and it's very nicely integrated with the framework for retrieval augmented generation, which is LangChain. We can take a look at it during the code walkthrough. So we retrieve the top relevant pieces, and we build with that a context for the LLM, for the Qwen or for the Llama or whatever model we do for whatever large language model we use for generating the final answer. Which the thing is that take the final answer, and if there is a question, provide some context, some relevant context, which is grounded, which is actually the pieces of the content, of the actual content of the blog in this case, and we can produce, not only feed the actual content to the network for having the details, but actually for keeping grounding and prevent from hallucination, which is the model doesn't know about the content, has no data, information, or knowledge or skill about how to come with the correct answer, and simply is very able to create something convincing, even if it is completely a lie, which is hallucination. The other side of the hallucination is that this is augmentation, this is generation. There's generative models, which are not by any means, or is not the main objective to create something grounded, but is create something consistent as an output, a consistent output. That could be true or not, but should be consistent and in line with the question, with the prompt, which doesn't need to be grounded. And that's what we call hallucination, but it's the generative part of it. If we want to be creative, we don't want to be grounded into facts, but we do not have a explicit way of saying reply with truth or reply with consistency, and that's the reason why they hallucinate. And hallucination is a judgment on the evaluator, and then we parse the answer. Sorry. And this is the main thing. This is the pipeline. This is how retrieval augmented generation works in general, because it's a very well-established approach. It's a very well-established problem, And the tools for that, even if it is quite recently, they're pretty mature because there's a lot of business cases, a lot of applications for making LLMs accessible to private or big repositories of knowledge. So I tried some models, which is the fun part of this system, of this work, of this model, is try to compare them in between and see if Qwen 3.5 is better than GPT-Os. And even further, going to a bigger version of Qwen 3.5, even if it barely fits into the graphical card. So it's part of the fun of the story. And yeah, this is meant to be quite reproducible. If you want to do it, there's a quick start, and you should be able to run a query very pretty straightforward. Once that you install the module and you install Ollama, which is the backend, this is where we are going to, instead of calling to an external API in the cloud, in the internet, we're going to call an API in localhost, which is served by Ollama, which is very straightforward, very easy, convenient to do vanilla deployments of local LLMs. Yeah, this is some kind of information about that. And then comes the evaluation, which is the interesting part of the evaluation. The models in between, first of all, be able to evaluate a model itself, standalone, and get some metrics and see how good performs a RAG pipeline on itself, standalone, and be able to throw away some metrics, some figures, and say, okay, it's 83% or whatever, but we got a number, and then we try to make sense about how what it represents, what it's capturing, and especially be able to compare between them, between local models for their powering their RAG pipeline, and even one step further, versus frontier thinking models, versus frontier models like, in this case, I used Grok 4.20, the latest development by XAI, which at this time, unlike 2 years ago, you can go ask a model about something that is not encoded in its ways, and it goes and browses the internet and reads the thing and provides a reply based not only on your question but as well in this context. Even further, this model, the Grok 4.2, it's able to parse content from YouTube. It's very powerful. And we will take a look at and compare the local RAG versus this. And we will see that it's not worse. My 16 gigabytes card with barely 500 euros is not worse than the full data center for Grok in Memphis, which is great. And so it's David versus Goliath with no tokens leaving my machine. It's incredible. And I provide some discussion about specific results of specific queries by different models, and I perform a detailed analysis by revealing the quirks and the details and the insights and the depth, the consistency of the replies for each of these models, local and frontier by Grok. And I'm the domain expert for this because I wrote it down myself, and I know probably better than anyone the depth, the hidden Easter eggs in the blog posts, And well, who can have, aside of my mother, who is probably the 90% of the readers about the blog, aside of me, who is able to capture the depth of the insights and the richness of the replies that they have. By the way, I am amazed by the depth and the richness of the replies of any of these models, both the locals and both the privative, the commercial models for Grok. And we will go then into that, and there is a very nice story about the limitations of going into a limited resources environment, where instead of, if you find a limitation, instead of throwing budget and money into it, say, okay, let's stay with my current setting, and let's try to figure out how long can I stretch it, how much can I squeeze it, and it's part of the game. And let me go later on with that story, because I think it's interesting and full of learnings for me. Let me show you the system. Let me show you the code. Okay. I'll try to show the proper thing. This is my repository where I used to work here in PyCharm. Close tabs. README, and this is README, and this is the master. This is what we have seen. This is structure. Okay, yeah. And what I want you to show is the core of the system, which is it's implemented around LangChain, which is a library for mainly local large language models, and one of the best, most mature and most useful solutions for this is what they implement very cleanly, at least for me, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG. And we will go to RAG. Here, this is the core of the system. The core of the system is this object, this class, which within is the heart of the core is this statement, which is divided across several lines, but it's just one statement. And this framework, as the problem is that mature and that useful, there is solutions at very high level with a great level of abstraction for being able to think and implement in terms like this. You set up context, you declare which is the format of the docs, you declare which is the question, you declare the prompt, you set the LLM, and you parse the output. And this is the core of our retrieval augmented generated system. And we can say there's not much more than this, but let's enrich this a little bit, and let's try to go deeper and see what's behind this. And the retriever is the is where we get the database, and the database is this, and this is implemented here, custom implementation around LangChain and Chroma and Ollama, and it's simply doing this, and it's able to do most of the things, and that's simply because it's pretty standard problem, and it can take the list of the documents. It takes the list of the documents and simply places it into Chroma. Here they are. This is the vector database, and this is the Chroma. Whatever it is serialized, here is the database based on SQLite and things like that. But it's vector sets, approximate near neighbors, and all these things. okay, and cosine similarity, because the embeddings are very nice, and the embeddings comes from Qwen 3 embedding model. Okay, I'm starting to think, before going much deeper into this, let me show you, for having a material idea about the outer layer of the system, if we want to run, and we go into query, and this is the output of the system. Okay, this is how we interact manually with the system. We declare the rag, and we do a query, and it simply replies a response. I used to frequently, I despise notebooks as anti-pattern, and I try not to use it, and I say that this is not what we data scientists and machine learning engineers do. But it's very inconvenient, and sometimes I need to fully agree with Jeremy Howards once again, and they're very useful, and sometimes it's the best to show some of the things and to learn, and especially for me, they're very good, and they're probably the best solution that I have found, where I found more comfortable with. It's for displaying the outcome of a system. Here we got all of that happens. Let me close this, and here we can see what is happening behind the lines. When we set up a rag, we crawl if we need it, and we fetch the blog and retrieve all of the blog posts, all of the articles, and they're parsed and stored somewhere in the doc log, and there is some splitting, and there is a number of documents which are indexed in the vector database, and then the Ragas comes and declares the pipeline that we've seen before, which is this, with all of the models, the things that we can. This is the nice thing about the about the notebook, that you can match the code, the execution, the internal login, and the output of the system, all in one place and persistent. So I can come here and show it to you. We ask a question. Now that it is ready, let me see. Now that it is ready, now we query and we ask this question and describe the relation between Elena and Alejandra, consider the authors' diverse experiences and multifaceted personality, reflecting on traits that are evident across various blog posts. Okay, this is no vanilla query. This is not only keyword matching, it's get overall patterns, not obvious things that permeate across several documents that are not in a single place, and try to come it together, to put it together into a accurate and well-formed response, a piece of text as an output. And I say, okay, based on the retrieved context, Elena and Alejandra are the daughters of the author, which is not probably explicitly stated at any part. I tend to be somehow cryptic and not try to avoid to be obvious, but especially about intimate and personal things about me and my family, which, well, I'm doing a public blog post, but I try to be at the same time kind of privacy compelling, keep some level of privacy, not to reveal things obviously, because I don't want it neither, because of my style of writing and approaching. I don't want the obvious, so I end up being very critic. So probably this blog is not is a hard test. It's a hard data. It's a hard data set for RAG, because it has up to layers, which, by the way, I'm able to assess because I wrote it down. Okay, and they share a profound sisterly bond that is deeply woven into the author's journey of fatherhood. The author's journey. This is not a single time This is not a moment in time. It's across a journey, and it's able to go through the evolution of the blocks, of the content. The sisterhood of Elena and Alejandra. Elena and Alejandra are not merely siblings in a biological sense. They represent a spiritual and emotional continuum in the author's life. Elena associated with the 2019 blog post Poco antes de Elena, appears to be the elder sister, while Alejandra, connected to the 2023 post Poco antes de Alejandra, is the younger daughter. Again, not obvious things. If you do vanilla large language model, you do not track this because it's not explicit information, it's not explicit data, but it's understanding about the content. That's the thing, and it provides a summary, a legacy, and a closing remarks for coming up with a reply, because we ask him to be long enough and elaborate, and he does. And there are some other queries. Okay, let's keep it for later. There are more concrete queries. I don't ask for being longer, for being that elaborate, so it tries to stick to the content and to the reply and makes it more concise. And there is very little hallucination, if any, that I can see here, and they're very accurate. Okay, well, this is an example for you to have a closer feeling about how the input and the output is, and what is the functionality of this. So, okay, let me go back to the RAG, and we are going to see the we were taking a look at the vector database, and once again it's this concise because most of the implementation is behind the scenes and is done in langchain chroma, langchain embeddings, and it even has a pedantic model for a document, because it's something commonly done here, and we do not need to base media, and this would be something related to PyCharm, to pedantic. Okay, here it's relying on pedantic for being able to handle entities and be able to do the proper apps, to do the proper abstractions, and simplify the implementation around this. Okay. What else do we have? Okay, this is the retrieval part. This is the generation part. Generation part is well, we saw that it is the part is more related to the augmentation, and here we got the question, and here we got the prompt, and the prompt is simply there is some context, do not hallucinate, this is a question, there is a context, and provide an answer. And then comes the LLM, and the LLM is just a wrapper around Ollama for being able langchain to access it, and it's simply this. And the rest is in the weights. It's a model, and this is nothing else. This is Ollama. This is in langchain Ollama. This is no custom implementation. It's simply out of the box. This is how we set the model. The only thing we need to do to provide is which model are you talking about, and it's declared here as the default argument, and it's this one in this case, Qwen 3.5, the 27 version. Yep. And that's all. And query is query, and get context is get context, and format docs is it's nothing. It's almost previously implemented. It's just putting the pieces together. Okay. Let me talk about thinking output parser later on, because it's a very interesting story. and it's part of the fun during the development and learning of this. Okay, let me take a look about the crawler, because it's something that we mentioned and we've seen through the log. And when we instantiate the RAG object, the pipeline, if we need it, we crawl. Otherwise, we take it as it is. And the crawling, it produces this the crawling produces this list of documents. Okay, this is the doc list, and it's implemented in two pieces. One is the crawler, and the other is the doc loader. And the crawler is a very interesting piece of work, which I developed mostly on the previous stage 2 years ago, in 2024. It relies on beautiful soup, and it takes the URL and tries to find all of the posts available there. It goes, scrolls below the fold, and tries to retrieve all of the accessible information that is in the blog post. Let me show it to you once again. And here's the Lightful Observaciones, and this is a blog post, it's a piece of text, and here you need to ask the crawler to do not stay in the first page but look for more entries, because there are more of them. And it was not obvious at the first part, but I was able to implement it with the help of LLMs, obviously, because I don't need to know everything. They can help me. And that's it. And it stores the pieces into block.json, which says there's a title, this is pieces of, this is each of the posts is here, okay? This is the title and the text. And then they're indexed into the vector database, into Chroma, being accessible on query time for the RAG to retrieve them and build an answer using them. What else? Sorry. So, well, this was fine. This I acquired my local GPU, moved from Llama 3 to the new Qwen models, and I was able to run it in reasonable time. As you can see here, maybe we can try to I almost say in the browser. Let me go into the browser and launch a Jupyter notebook so you can see how it runs. Okay, here it is. And here we got, for instance, let's do it with the easiest one, Qwen 3.5, the 9 version. Yeah, we restarted, and we have the query, the RAG. No need to crawl because it's already there. So the vector database is there, and now here is some other models, some other runs need to run the crawler as we saw before, but we are able to reuse it if available, or if we do not need to reindex it because maybe we changed the embedding model or whatever. And this should be running. Yeah, the GPU starts fanning, so it should take like a few seconds to produce an answer. It's coming, I'm sure. Yeah, soon. It's on the way. And what else to mention? Okay, the next thing I want to go through is about the evaluation, because it's fine to look at the model, but then okay, well, here we got it. And yeah, this is similar to other times, but it's not reproducible. It has some temperature, some randomness into it, and yeah, let me just stop it because it's getting warm, and I've already did it before. It's stopped. Okay, so things are cooler now. Let me go back to PyCharm. So the next thing I wanted to show you now is evaluation. And because, yeah, we change the model, we run a query again, and we see the difference in the answer, but it's very difficult to see, okay, how better it is now. Is there any change? It's more accurate, it's less hallucinated, it retrieves parts hidden. So because of that, okay, we in machine learning, in data science, we do evaluation of prediction. So I found a pretty interesting thing, which is Ragas. I do evaluation with Ragas. I try to do it manually, but it's pointless, as we are seeing this problem is not solved, but it's a mature problem, and we have even evaluation frameworks for that. And I found Ragas, which is pretty nice. Let me show you, because it's that looks ugly. And Ragas concepts. Well, this is the library, and it's a Python library. It's a pip install, uv install, and it has 4 components: experimentation for trying to modify things. It has datasets to manage, to create, to maintain. There are metrics. You can have some predefined metrics already declared, or you can extend it with your own metrics. And the cool thing, this was very cool, test data generation. I will go through it because I found it amazing. So I have these 2 parts here, the RAG evaluation and the evaluation set. And RAG eval is just this, okay? I don't want you to read all of the things, but it's just establish the metrics, set up the metrics, which are already implemented. They come from Ragas, and they're evaluate. And evaluate is just a wrapper for evaluate. And evaluate is it's pretty much defined. This decorator creates a framework for the model to understand all that is happening behind, and he knows that there is some evaluation result as an input, and as an output, returns the evaluation result. It's just amazing. It's probably almost done. There is full of these future things for asynchronous programming, because this is intended for heavy load and for distributed workloads and heavy settings, being able to handle latencies for queues and things like that. So it's full of features and asynchronous programming and a process, which you don't need to care much more about that if you want to stay at a surface level. And it's only, as mentioned before, is just putting the pieces together, because it's mostly implemented. You can extend it with your own metrics. Part of this, and I will mention at some point, is that because of this experiment approach, this decorator is the framework, is the philosophy or the approach of the evaluation framework for Ragas. And I had a different one before finding and using Ragas. So it required a refactor of some of the parts, some of the at a deeper level beyond the surface, about how I approach the structure of the module, and but I think it makes more sense now, and it's a reasonable way. I feel comfortable with this approach, and there is a refactoring at the same for making Ragas available here. And the other thing, the evaluation set. It's creating an evaluation set, because I have no ground truth. I have no pair of question and reply. That was not available. Don't let me talk through the browser while I'm going through the code. I was showing you the rag eval, and as I was telling you, and almost do it again, I was talking about this rag eval, which is full of asynchronous things, and the experiment framework, the experiment approach with the decorator, which forced me and led me to a refactor and a better approach, a better structuring of the code and the logical units of the implementation. And it's, as I was saying, it's all implemented in Ragas, and well, just repeating what I just said, but showing you the actual pieces of the code where this is implemented, or actually not implemented, but used and put together because they're implemented in Ragas. And the other thing, the evaluation set. And the evaluation set, as I was telling, there is no set of pairs connecting questions to answers or queries to responses, which one is the correct. And the good thing is that this is not a new problem, and there is a out-of-the-box solution to generate a dataset. And this takes your collection of documents, it takes the documents and creates and uses an LLM, an embedding model, and this is the dataset generator, and it creates a Ragas dataset, and it has these fields: it's user input, reference context, and even has a persona name and query style. For maybe there is not question to answer, and take into account the context, take into account where the document is retrieved for that. It actually has different personas, different query styles. For instance, if we look into the dataset, which is in data and eval set, here we have, here we can see what is the significance. This is the input, this is the query, and this is the reference, where it is a good answer. And it's going to measure the affinity and the proximity to the provided answer to this kind of ground truth. And there are some reference context, and persona name is not persona name here, but there are in some other. Persona name, literature professor. It's like role playing. How would a literature professor will query this? Or a global economic analyst, or a literary professor again. And what about query style if it is with poor grammar, like poorly stated? ¿Cuándo es la fecha de esta carta para Alejandra? This is, okay. ¿Qué pasa con el sudeste asiático en pandemia? Poor grammar. This is written from your iPhone. Okay. And it's able to provide these angles for the evaluation set, for providing different set of queries, or for evaluating across several slices. But how will this impact to a group cohort of users? And so this is very mature. I couldn't implement this by hand, but luckily it is available. And what else? So yeah, it's simply that. Things about this. Okay, if we run, there is in the run we have a generator set, and we have even a generator set as a notebook for keeping the output. And it's just this, because I don't want to implement in notebooks, but I want to put together input calls and output. And it's this. Loaded 6 documents, generating a set with 16 samples. Okay, 16 samples. As we can see, the evaluation set is 16 records, which you could say, okay, this is not very big, but two things. It's difficult and exhaustive, and it has a heavy load to evaluate, because you want to do it several replies for the same input and average, because you want to discount randomness of their response generation. And the other side of the thing is that generating these pairs is very heavy. It took probably longer than an hour to generate these 16 samples, because it needs to apply analysis from many different perspectives. But the good thing is that generating the pair is like an open book exam, where you can look at the inputs and the outputs, where you can look at the materials. You do not need to memorize anything. You do need to squeeze that much your reasoning. So you can use a lighter model for that. And that's what I did, is RAG evaluation. If we look in evaluation, there is in the initialization, there is an evaluation. No, sorry, I was going to show this model. There is a model for the evaluation set for the generation, which is not 3.5, it's 2.5. It's a smaller model. It's a lighter model, which is able to run in shorter time. It's less exhaustive. But doesn't need to be that intelligent, because the task of creating the dataset is an open book exam, where you can access constantly the material, so you do not need to reason that hard. So it's good. For me, it's useful to do that. As well, there are some capabilities which I think they were not ready or streamlined or clean in the 3.5 to interact with these specific things, that these specific operations and usage of the model. And I remind to have some kind of problems, but the main thing is that it's easy to do it with a less smart model, because it's less hard. It's a less hard task. So now we have not only an evaluation framework, but a way of creating an evaluation golden data set, a set to evaluate. And we have access to something that we can take as ground truth. And by the way, I took a look at the instances of the test set, and yeah, they are consistent. They are useful. There are good questions. Some of them are more specific and could be answered through keyword matching, but some others are less obvious and goes across several documents. You cannot simply take the right document and summarize. You need to compile information across several sources, across several pieces of context. And yeah, that is a strong data set. So now we can evaluate a model, and it's very easy, because you build the RAG you load the evaluation set, and this evaluator takes this RAG and evaluates on this evaluation set. That's high level, but it's the way I think it should be, and provide some results. But the bad thing is that it's not here. I have not rerun this, but the main thing I use to evaluate is the comparison. Okay, and I do a comparison notebook where I simply go through the list of models and evaluate each of them, and I have this cleanly executed here. And there is a report here, which is for each of the models, the 4 metrics that we are considering. And there are two types of metrics. Ones are about the context, the precisional recall, classical evaluation for a classical information retrieval problem, which is precisional recall. And we have the counterparts for the augmentation part of the final answer, which is if it is faithfulness, the faithfulness of it, and the relevancy of the answer, which are somehow counterparts, because this faithfulness is, does the model hallucinate? And it's like relates to precision. Does the model contain, does the recall, the retrieved list of answers have incorrect pieces which do not belong here? And in the reply, there's pieces of the answer which are not truthful, they're not connected to the question. And the answer relevancy is this answering properly? Is recalled? Is anything missing, or is the reply consistent enough? And that's what we evaluate. We evaluate somehow the retrieval and the final part. And we have for these 3 models, GPTOs and Qwen were very nice, and they were working. I was looking before at the replies, and they seem consistent. They seem inside. They seem on point, and taking information which is sometimes scattered across several blog posts. My feeling and what I found that is GPTOs is providing very interesting replies, but sometimes it hallucinates and invents and takes very long licenses about what to discuss about. And sometimes it's very verbose, and sometimes hits very good things, and sometimes it simply provides things that I've never read, I've never written, or simply are not accurate, or simply are not true, and it's invented by him. This Qwen, the small variant, is very accurate. It doesn't hallucinate. It is a very conservative model, provides conservative replies, but the answers are not that well written, and they're not capture all of the insights. and the faithfulness, the faithfulness of Qwen 3.5, the bigger version, is, I think it's the stronger model for building the replies and captures deep insights. We will see it later. And maybe it's something here that answer relevancy is missing some pieces, but I think there are some other reasons explaining that, like dirtiness of the trace, because I think, and I will go through it to mention that sometimes there's problems with that. A long story behind that, but is basic. The explanation is that sometimes it is the reason the thinking trace is sneaking into the replies unexpectedly, and shouldn't be happening. Is diluting the relevancy of the questions of the replies. We will see that in detail. I could have stop the project here with these two models. But I found this variant, which I found, I started to think, okay, maybe I can try to squeeze a little bit more the GPU, because there is some spare RAM still, there is some capacity to add some bigger model, and try the 27 version, the big brother of Qwen. But using Ollama, it went out of memory. It's able to load because it's at the limit, but what happens is that in Ollama it loads the model, but then as you have any kind of minimal context, that consumes space for the key value cache for the context, and it spits out of memory very soon and offloads the layers from GPU into CPU, and it takes forever. It doesn't finish. So I didn't give up and I wanted to try it. So I thought, okay, maybe I can use quantization. And then I looked into Ollama, but there was not any version. There was no alternative versions of quantized model, because Ollama, it takes a curated set of models which works very well, but not all of them. There is not the model suite that we have in Hugging Face, for instance, where we have people quantifying models and they have like 3 downloads. There is a long tail of models. There is a huge variety, and I have no version for that for running in Ollama. So I thought, okay, and I explain it here, right? Because I wanted to take track about this, and okay, I say I'm going to try to use Llama CCP with Llama CPP, which is what the grown-ups do for local deployment of large language models. And I tried, but it was a mess for some reasons. The embedding model was not working there, even if I try to circumvent and try to provide solutions for that. The embedding model API seems broken for some models within Llama CPP. I couldn't be able to do the embedding and the retrieval with Llama. So I thought, okay, I can keep Ollama for the embeddings and rely on Llama CPP for the augmentation. But you need to launch and stop it sequentially for not to have any memory both models, the embedding and the Qwen 27 billion parameters, because they overflow. So I started to make crazy things for launching and stopping servers, because I needed to keep it sequentially, but it was getting worse and worse. So I did something else, which is, okay, I'll maybe be able to wrap a model from Hugging Face, the quantized version, and make it work in Ollama. And I was able. There is a script for doing that, and I took this model, which is in const. I took this model from Hugging Face, and I downloaded it and put it into and use it into this script and create a model for Ollama and run it, and they did. I think I need to add this to the README, how to run this this script, because I think it's not. It's here. Maybe I can run it here for you to take a look. Should be this. Maybe it's an updated model. Yeah. Well. Okay. And I force Ollama to run the model and reply to this. Hey man, and this is the new model. Okay. This is just creating a wrapper, but everything ran fine. The models were loaded and unloaded sequentially for not keeping both embedding and augmentation model at the same time in memory, and produces the replies. And I hit evaluate, and I found that it was kind of disappointing. When I compared, not this time, but in a previous version, it was like very poor. Like, okay, what is happening here? And I took a look at the queries, at the specific interaction with the models to get to look into specific replies, and I started to see these kind of things, thinking. So the thinking was being able leaking into the replies, even if I did stupid things with this, like if we look into the local history for this selection, we can see here that I try to give any kind of possible parameters or any kind of system prompting engineering to say no think, please no think, things like that. Nothing worked. So kept on degrading the replies, even if after the thinking trace the replies were nice. There were very strong responses. So yeah, I tried, but didn't work. So there is one extra thing that that I was able to do, and is if we go to RAG, there is something that we saw before, the think output parser, and well, it does this. There are a lot of corner cases. Okay, test-driven development is your friend, especially when you run complex and heavy things and you do not want to modify everything and to run everything to test one thing with regex, because that iteration of the model takes forever and you need to do it. You need testing for not being trapped in that cycle. And yeah, it was needed to simply regex removing this. But the model kept on sneaking traces, let me think, and they were in very different ways. With it was difficult to, because it's not deterministic, and there was some temperature in the model, and the thinking trace was not the same structure every time. So yeah, but in the visual replies that I have inspected, visually, there's no leaked thinking trace. But it could happen that I'm not seeing them in the evaluation set, and because of that, we get this this behavior that we were mentioned before about the relevance and the faithfulness. But yeah, the faithfulness doesn't hallucinate, but maybe there is some delusion here in some of the replies of the evaluation data set, decreasing the relevancy of the replies. could be. Because I think this model is stronger. The eye test of the domain expert, of me being the writer and evaluator, is this model looks stronger, and this hallucinates, and this is just not sophisticated enough. That was a interesting story for me. Where's the readme? And it's stated here. The limitations, no, and the thinking output parser. I try to remind this because it led. Even I try to modify the context. If we look in the RAG, there is a parameter for context, which I try to restrict in order to decrease the size of the key value cache memory consumption. But even with a stupidly low, stupidly short context, I wasn't able to make it work in Llama CCP. So yeah, that's the story about brute force versus efficiency. So we could say, okay, I will keep on being poor if I spend $500 into a bigger GPU, and it will have fit into it. But I would not have gone through this and try to look into the inner details of all of these things, try to do Llama CPP, install CUDA, roll back to a version of Ubuntu where I was able to install CUDA. There was simply a lot of hard work, but if you do not have that friction, there is no learning. You can throw away money and resources, but constraints, it's a reflection that keep on stamping into it. Constraints are a way of growth and learning. So they're very interesting. Okay, another thing. What else? Okay, now that I had these three models working, I go through to a new thing, which is there is a possibility of my local RAG on $500 GPU not being worse than a frontier model, which is Grok 4.20, which is a pretty solid model. And I try to compare some of the replies of the model to those from Grok. There are some of them. For instance, this is the big Qwen, and it is. I cannot. Well, maybe I can evaluate Grok 0.2. Maybe I could evaluate Grok 4.2 against the evaluation set, but I didn't do it. It will be a different exercise because I need to update to accommodate that for the evaluation framework. But it can be done for sure. But what I did was simply an eye test, an inspection of a set of queries and replies, and I compared this, for instance, for impact of boxing for the approach to life of the author, and I did it here in my local Qwen, in my local setting, and I compare versus Grok, which is here in this. Okay, and I click the link. Let me show it to you. It's here. This is describe the impact for for to boxing, for the approach to life of the author of this blog, and I provide a link to the blog. And this wasn't able to do. It wasn't possible to do it 2 years ago in 2024 when I started this project. But yes, now. But well, in my local setting, there is no tokens leaving the machine, and I'm sovereign. But this does pretty nice work. Okay, but this has the Memphis data center behind for the training, for the inference, for the searching through the web on the fly, and it does a good way. It does an interesting question, and I couldn't find issues with that. But even it goes on my YouTube channel and looks into that, because it's referenced in some other post of the blog. It has reference to that, so it goes like two steps ahead and through the graph, and goes and find and crawls somewhere else. It's very powerful, definitely, but this is me implementing and on my own, just as a solo developer, on my $500 GPU, and I'd say it's not worse. And this is a challenging query, because there's the impact of. Sorry, I was not showing you in the local. This does proper work doing that. Is I'd say it's not worse than the Grok reply. It's not it's a subtle query, because boxing, it is a reference. The main reply to this query is in this blog post. I don't want. Well, let me show you the browser. And in the browser, there is a blog post, which is this one, which has not boxing in the title, and even has not boxing in the content. Okay, but it talks allegorically or indirectly or cryptically or subtly about boxing. It's definitely about boxing, and it captures places from that area, and it's tricky, because there is another blog post, the last one. Let me show it again to you. Which is the last one. Where there are plenty of references to boxing, because it mentions about a repository or another module in this monorepo about TopBox, which is PageRank for boxers, and it talks in the YouTube video walking through this module, this project, and it talks about boxers, and it talks about boxers and the Boxer project. It's full of references to boxers. Okay. Let me go back by charm. And this takes reference about Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez that I explained in the blog post for actually Boxer, where I explain my relationship with boxing. But it's tricky, and this reply doesn't capture the full idea of boxing, as I explained in that old blog post, and it gets gets distracted by the most recent one. But it happens as well in the Grok answer. So this one is very tricky. So it's not perfect, but it takes things about that, like reference to Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez, but very subtly. It's maybe the blog post is simply not well written, and it's not, the information is not there that is about boxing. But I think if you read it carefully, you realize that it's about boxing. But there are some others. Bitcoin, there is a more obvious question about Bitcoin, which is answered and is even in the title of the blog post, which is the reasons, the 9 reasons for having Bitcoin. And it's a good summary, as good as it is in the Grok version, in the Grok reply. But this is more obvious. But there are some other answers. How the author describes the information as a good of distinctive nature in this blog. And as well, there's no keyword matching here. And it captures the depth of the idea, which I think is more obvious. And it matches and is able to create to reference the blog post, the article about Hypernolithic, where I describe the information as something that if a special good that is not scarce, because if you give it to someone else, you do not stop having the information in the first place. So it's multiplicative, and there's no keyword for that. But the model, both this and Grok, captures this answer, and there are answers that definitely capture, as I was mentioned before, in this query, the relationship between Elena and Alejandra. This is across various blog posts. It captures about the evolution, things that are scattered across several documents, about several places in the 52 entries in the blog, and it creates something which is takes patterns, subtle patterns, and things that I somehow encoded as that are not obvious, and I'm simply amazed that he found it. He says, based on the retrieved context, Elena and Alejandra are the daughters of the author, and they share a profound sisterly bond that is deeply woven into the author's journey of fatherhood. It simply captures the whole thing, and then starts to go into the details, into part by section by section, the sisterhood of Elena and Alejandra, the author's fatherhood journey, the spiritual dimension, the legacy, and look at the depth and the patterns that it captures. The author's relationship with both daughters marks a profound transformation in his identity. The blog post, Poco antes de Elena and Poco antes de Alejandra, function as farewell letters to the pre-father self, marking the transition into fatherhood. The 2024 post El Tao de Ser Padre represents an even deeper exploration of this transformation, which is able to compare the depth of the post relative to the other ones. in very subtle ways. It's deeper. It's even a deeper exploration of this transformation, where the author reflects on breaking generational cycles and embracing authentic fatherhood. And I mentioned something about breaking generational cycles, about things that I have seen when I was a kid that I wanted to do when I am a father, and it simply encodes it very smartly, subtly, and accurately here. The author's approach to fatherhood is an intimate and private. There is no audience, no likes, only the treasures of the relationship kept sacred between father and daughters. The names Elena and Alejandra appear nowhere public. The thing that I was mentioning before, I don't want to be public and I want to somehow preserve a level of privacy, not including PEA, but except in this private blog post and their author's heart, suggesting that their identities are protected from public performance. And it's able to come with very depth reasoning about far-reaching insights with the relationship between the author and his daughters transcends the mundane. There is a mystical quality to how he perceives them. Elena as a companion who exists before we understand it, and Alejandra as a daughter whose name was understood through surrender and the irony of the universe. It's simply amazing how subtle patterns are combined where they're not obviously stated, they're not explicitly stated, and it mixes them with accurate and relevant quotes, literal quotes, at the right places. The author writes, solo cuando me rindo en las incontestables manos del vacío, la ironía del universo me eleva al corazón de la mujer que amo. Así comprendí, hija, que te llamarías Alejandra. Perfect quote for that specific place. And the legacy. And this is from a different part of the blog. This is for the recent post where it says like this: the author envisions a letter to Elena and Alejandra that could be kept privately, and a document that captures their relationship without public performance. This reflects a fatherhood that is about to genuine connection rather than external validation. The blog timeline is described as surgical, with these two names making the pivotal moments that split the author's identity in half, before and after the fatherhood. Extremely accurate, extremely challenging to come up. In essence, Helena and Alejandra represent the author's more sacred legacy, his daughters, who are not just children but spiritual companions, and the very reason for his transformation into a father who seeks to bring light to this world, even if that light is no more than a reflection, a specific quote, at the right time, at the right moment. Once again, it's just extremely accurate and insightful, and it's not obvious, and it's probably one of my best readers. Their relationship is one of mutual recognition, protection, and love. This is the closing remark, as requested in the query, protection and love, where Elena serves as Alejandra's first companion and sister, and together they represent the author's most profound connection to the world and his deepest commitment to breaking cycles and creating something authentic and enduring. And it captures all, not only across specific places, but as a whole. It's simply amazing, and it ran in my local GPU. At the same level, probably that frontier model Grok with unlimited resources. Two different approaches. One with billions of dollars and one with thousands. One with elite, massive teams of talent and developers and people supporting the project. The other is just Adrian doing nasty things in his spare time. I've been thinking about this for a long time, about who has the biggest cluster, who has the biggest one. Many times the big companies or companies trying to squeeze or to take advantage of the position is drag the battle into an open field where the victory is a matter of scale, of amount, of who has the biggest one, who has the biggest army, who has the strongest tanks, who has the heaviest weapons. The other thing is the guerrilla fighting. It's the decentralized, the non and open field, and there are many people. There are some people out there. We have Pliny the Liberator. We have Continuum behind the. I don't know if it's someone else aside of him is for the Hermes agent for the Hermes labs, and they're building open source. They're trying to have these local systems, which, for instance, open cloud is like this this multi-tier system that you don't need to rely on a model where it has all the internet encoded and compressed into model weights that big that only you can run it in your data center. When you can have an intelligent model being able to read anything and provide an intelligent response building on these two parts of the system, the intelligence and the context. So you can have memory decoupled from the intelligence, and that enables a whole different paradigm, a whole different ecosystem. It's way more open. Democratizing is used too many times, but I think decentralization is a more interesting approach to that. Decentralization is very interesting. So there's no dominance, there's no abuse, and there are many people contributing. And obviously, people who have committed pharaonic investments, they do not want to really spread the use and the capabilities. They want to keep them, and they need commitments to pay back and money to make. And I have no moral judgment about that. I like money too. But I think that decentralization is a very interesting way, probably, and it's unavoidable because, especially now, for instance, with Hermes agent, with RAG block, with RAG systems, these two-tier systems are enabling small actors to do things which looks like magical. There is a different component to that, which is the efficiency, because brute force I do not like it. Okay, when I was a kid and I was watching Discovery documentaries, I wanted to see the big thing, and you want to create a data center, but Earth starts to feel crowded and drags you behind, so you need to go to space and build a data center in space and place everything full of satellites, and became a Kardashev tool company in order to train Grok, which is It's amazing. But there is some less less brute force approach, more decentralized, which is in this direction of agents, memory, context decoupled from intelligence. We have François Cholet as well, the guy for the ARC challenge, which now has released the third version because the second one is almost saturated now. It focuses not on memorization but in generalization. So that's intelligent. Intelligent is not to have a great memory but be able to learn quickly and effortlessly and get a great level of intellect but with little effort and solve easily with a little amount of resources. And I like very much that approach. And this is the for as well for privacy. You don't want anyone. Maybe you want to discuss with your AI agent how to handle your investment, but you don't want to disclose how much money do you have, and you don't want to Anthropic to know how much do you have in your bank account, but you want your AI agent to be able to respond locally with intelligence and try to give you some advice or try to consult correctly with them. There is one extra angle for this, and is I started to play with this because I could, because I can, and because I wanted to know how deep can I understand my own writing. There are two sides. There are one of interpolation and one of extrapolation. Interpolation is deep inside. Let's try to figure out what is inside this block. What is the patterns that I could be missing? Let's try to do some psychotherapy on my writings, on my materials. And let's figure out and find things that it was not in the surface for me, that were not obvious, and they were made manifest and simplified by the LLM about the way I approach things and the way I think and how am I. That is one direction. It's towards the inside. That is interpolation, but there is extrapolation, and is what if I can feed my writings, my materials, my videos into an intelligent system that is able not only to replicate and to understand me, so not only that, but as well be able to distill my taste, my appreciation, not my consciousness, but my approach, my style, my interests, and amplify them and create things that amplify me, like a digital twin, like doing clones and deploying in the cloud or in several GPUs. And I say, why would I do that? Because it's not me, but what if it is me? What if it is the Turing test about my mom, of not being able to distinguish if it is me or if it is Qwen who's writing? Is that the Turing test of by your mother or your reader, not knowing if it is the actual you or is an LLM regurgitating your thoughts. Why would I like to do that? Because what I want is to do it myself. When I write, the good thing is that, okay, this is my work. I did it. I was the one who did it. I don't mine if it is good or bad, but it's authentic, it's mine, it's me. I was conscious during that, and it's a work of mine. I'm the father of it. Huh? And the other thing is that, but what if this is able to transcend me, and I do not need to upload it myself to the internet before dying, because maybe I have already done it, because it's in my writing, this is things that I've done, my interactions, my videos, everything that is recorded and persistent about me could be digested, integrated, and amplified by an intelligent system, let's say an LLM or or a rack system or whatever it is, 5 years ahead from now. And maybe not even now, but maybe when I'm not here and my daughters want to say, how will my father will give me advice about this, and they do not need to read through the thing, but they can go ask an LLM, okay, you are Adrian, and talk me about this. And it does it in my writing or even in my voice if it is synthetic. So sometimes we think that the things that we do are no matter at all because the universe is so big. Where's this? You're not even a grain of sand in this big beach. But it's irreversible, and now that you have done something, it could stay forever, and like a snowball can grow up and becomes something meaningful, even in the vastness of the time and space. And we are at a time, 2016, where we're able to place our heads into this new world that is opening up in front of us and say, oh my God, how many things are possible. This was just one of them.